Every day, modern vehicles are forced into urban spaces that were designed decades ago. We're watching massive machines wedging themselves into concrete gaps that simply haven't grown to accommodate them. This chart shows the steady upward crawl of the average new European car. By mid-2023, it reached 180.3 centimeters across. That's roughly 1 centimeter of extra width every 2 years. A creep so slow it goes almost unnoticed, while the infrastructure line beneath stays flat. But stack those generations together, and the shift is glaring. The Land Rover Defender put on over 20 centimeters of width in just 6 years. The 2025 model now measures almost exactly 2 meters across its body. Meanwhile, the painted bays these vehicles have to live in haven't moved a millimeter. The standard UK parking space has sat squarely at 2.4 meters wide since 2007.
We are looking at a highly ordinary yet pervasive design failure. Mathematically, half of all new cars sold today no longer fit the environments built to house them. Take the top 100 best-selling cars in the European Union. Over 50% of them are physically too wide for the minimum on-street parking bays in cities like London, Paris, and Rome. This schematic breaks down the math of an off-street bay. Park a 2-meter SUV in a 2.4-meter space, and there is exactly 20 centimeters of air left on each side, and that is before you account for the vehicle parked right next to you. That tiny margin is the reason folded mirrors, door dings, and the physical contortions required to buckle in a child seat have become standard parts of the daily commute. Cities are tired of waiting for automakers to correct the scale. In early 2024, Parisian voters elected to triple parking fees for heavy cars, charging up to €18 an hour to price vehicles by their footprint rather than their emissions. What begins as a minor daily friction for the driver scales up to a heavily penalized, heavily taxed crisis for urban infrastructure. The cause of this squeeze starts deep inside the vehicle's architecture. As modern structural and energy demands increase, the internal chassis actively pushes outward against the skin of the car. Extra width is rarely the headline of any single program. It accumulates as a byproduct of entirely separate choices, a process known as unmanaged drift. This diagram shows the compounding factors. First, the lower wheelbase slides out for an imposing stance. Then, the base pushes horizontally for crash safety, while the floor thickens for EV batteries. Finally, shoulders expand and the grille stretches wide to project premium status. Each of those decisions is entirely rational in a vacuum, but combined, they produce a vehicle that is objectively worse to live with than the model it replaced. Width operates as a shared resource on the design floor. Every specific engineering brief borrows from it, but no single brief is responsible for controlling it. The deeper issue is a conflict of environments. During development, cars are heavily optimized for the showroom floor, a static, perfectly lit space designed to emphasize presence. The street demands the exact opposite. Usability is dynamic, badly lit, and constantly fighting against physical spatial constraints. Internal design reviews are structured to mimic the auto show. They grade for aesthetic presence on pristine white walls, ensuring the spatial realities of an early morning parking garage never get a fair hearing. When you optimize exclusively for an artificial presentation, you guarantee the product will eventually fail the user when they take it home. This physical reality is almost never addressed during the early sketching phases. By the time usability is actually tested in the real world, against a concrete pillar, the car's basic structure is already frozen in its body and white state. At that stage, millions have been spent on tooling. Manufacturers have no recourse left but to print a few lines of apology in the owner's manual. Treating a car's overall footprint as a post-production inevitability rather than a strict boundary set at the start is a fatal flaw in the design process. The intervention has to happen before the physical modeling tools are ever picked up. These decisions must be stress-tested while the dimensions are still soft. Real design intelligence means calculating exactly what an imposing stance will cost the buyer in daily usability. This visualization maps out those missing data points. It shows exactly how many parking spaces a specific width will lock out, and where the door opening arc will hit the boundary of a European minimum space. These unglamorous usability constraints have to be projected on the wall right alongside the hero shots during the very first internal reviews. Teams need the ability to pull these parameters back, dynamically adjusting and morphing the vehicle's proportions in response to real-world limits.
Cars will keep swelling outward until designers use the right tools to visualize the spatial cost and make the deliberate choice to stop the bloat before the concept ever leaves the screen.